Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting. Highway Commissioners, Cemetery Commissioners, November 30th, 2015, 6:35 p.m. Apologize for the delay. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, we're going to pull item 6 out of order, and I will abstain from the process, and Mr. Fox will handle it.
Mr. Chairman, before you abstain, you just need to vote in favor of remote participation by roll call vote.
All right, we've adopted the remote participation law that the state passed, and Mr. Marcy is going to participate remotely for one issue. So at this time, I'll call a roll call vote for remote participation.
John Ruda, aye.
Peter Fox, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye. This time, we'll pull item 6 out of order, and I will abstain from the action.
Aye, I'm going to put you on speaker now, okay?
Mr. Marcy, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Hi, Greg.
Okay.
No, that's Peter.
Oh, hi, Peter.
Mr. California.
Yes, I know I'm driving. Yeah, I think I'm sitting in West Sacramento at the moment.
Okay. I will entertain a motion for item number 6.
I will make a motion that the Board of Selectmen grant a one-day wine and malt license for Friday, December 4th, 2015, from 3:45 to 7:15 p.m. in the auditorium in new academic building for Nichols College Holiday Night Out.
Second.
All those in favor?
We're taking the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, the motion passes, and Mr. Chairman, I'm going to disconnect from Mr. Marcy.
That is fine.
Okay, all set, Mr. Marcy?
Thank you. All set. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We pulled it out of the hat.
Well, he's going to be here. He's going to be here by Friday to sign it. That's all.
Yeah.
She can't take it tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We now return to our regularly scheduled agenda. Acceptance of minutes, 11/16/2015.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we accept those minutes of 11/16/2015.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
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 Unanimous. 3A, Capital Improvement Committee. We have a request here from Mark A. Landry. Please let this serve as my intent to be appointed to the Dudley Capital Improvement Committee. I'd like to serve the remainder of the term for the vacancy that now exists as a result of a recent resignation. As a lifelong resident, I have been active with the Webster Dudley Veterans Association and would like to step forward to assist the community at this time. I look forward to your favorable response. Sincerely, Mark Landry. Is Mark present? Like to come up, Mark? Have anything to add?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mark Landry, Bud Drive. As you've read my letter, I'm active with the veterans, and I'd like to expand that more with the community to join in on the capital improvement planning.
First, Mark, thank you for your service to the country and
Thank you.
service to the veterans. I've seen you at many of the parades, and we certainly appreciate it. Mr. Fox is also a veteran.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Landry? Mr. Fox?
First of all, I want to say thank you very much for serving our country,
Thank you, sir.
and not only serving our country, but stepping up to want to help serve for the town. So I certainly want to thank you, and I appreciate that.
Thank
and
you,
it was
sir.
nice meeting you at the veteran ceremony.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ruda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve Mark Landry's appointment to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee with a term to expire on June 30th, 2018.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Fox. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Landry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Welcome.
You too, sir. Next, we have a follow-up from our last meeting. Bless you. The Board of Library Trustees is informing us that they unanimously voted to appoint Richard Clark as trustee to fill the current vacant term through the town election of June 2016. This is a mutual appointment. I will entertain a motion to appoint Mr. Clark. Mr. Fox.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Mr. Richard Clark for a term to expire June 13th, 2016, based on the recommendation of the trustees of the library.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Mr. Clark and Mr. Craver, I see you present. Would you like to add anything?
Appreciate your consideration, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Once again, somebody stepping up for our committee. We appreciate it.
And we're just appreciative that he has stepped up. He's got quite the resume, and we went through it at our last meeting, and that's the letter we received from Mrs. Cork, and we totally highly recommend it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Motion made and second. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
Recreation Committee. We have a request here from Ken Budkevich asking Mr. Marcy, the chairman, to seek appointment to the Parks and Recs Committee. I don't see Ken here. Did we do this at the last meeting?
We did, but Ken's
Yep. Didn't we vote on it at the last meeting? No, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think the whole board is familiar with the caliber of Mr. Bukevich, and I'd like to move that we appoint him with a term to expire June 30th, 2016, to the Recreation Committee.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded. I agree with Mr. Ruda. I don't think Ken needs any introduction. Nobody can question his dedication and his service to the town. We appreciate him stepping forward. Mr. Fox.
I think Ken would be a wonderful addition to this committee. With all his experience with outdoor activities and the work he's put into the rail trail with the town, he'll be a wonderful addition to this committee.
I agree. Anything else? Hearing none. All in favor, state aye.
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 Unanimous. Council on Aging, Catherine DeRocha, asking to be appointed to a term to expire June 30, 2018. We have a request here. Is Catherine present? She is not. What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we also appoint Catherine DeRoja with a term to expire June 30th, 2018, the Council on Aging.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fox. Again, we want to thank Catherine DeRocha for stepping up. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Public comments, citizens' comments, informational. Anybody wishing to be heard on anything that is not on the agenda tonight, now is your chance. Hearing none. Next up, we have a public hearing. We have from the second floor, Lisa Berg, the principal assessor, fiscal year 16 tax classification hearing to vote on a single tax rate. I declare public hearing open at 6:44. Good evening.
Good evening. So not much has changed from the past few years. We're asking, the Board of Assessors is asking that you vote once again on a single tax rate. The percentages of commercial, industrial, and personal property really hasn't changed, 7.7%. Residential is 92%. If we shift the burden of the tax rate onto the commercial and industrial properties, on an average, their tax bill would increase by $1,797, and the residentials would only see a decrease of $169. So the commercial properties would get hit pretty hard. Out of 351 towns in Massachusetts, only 110 of those have a split tax rate. We are the 66th lowest tax rate in the state of Massachusetts. The overall values of the single family this year have increased by 3%, and the overall values of the commercial and industrial properties have increased by 0.5%. The average single family here in town for fiscal 16 is $222,100. And the rest is just informational. You can see on page 6, I did like I do every year. I picked 7 towns, surrounding towns, and what their tax rates are and what their percentage of residential is, what their percentage of commercial, industrial, and personal property is. And if you look, Sturbridge in the past few years had a split tax rate. They just went back to a single tax rate. Webster is the only one out of all the ones that I chose in the surrounding towns that have a split tax rate. And they have 21% commercial properties. And then on page 3, I broke down so that you can see who the major businesses are in town. We only have 2 this year that are over $4 million in value. One of those is personal property. We have only one that's over $3 million. That's an industrial property. We have only 4 over $2 million. 2 of those are personal property. The other 2 are commercial and industrial properties. And then we only have 9 over $1 million. Everything else is under that.
Mr. Fox.
Lisa, what is the recommendation of your board?
The recommendation of the board is to stay with a single tax rate.
And that was voted on one of your meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Lisa, just for the people at home that probably won't see this, why would some of the commercial properties, can you explain why they'd be personal property? For example, Verizon. That includes like infrastructure and...
Personal property are businesses that pay on the contents of their business, desks, chairs. For example, we have the large solar farm up in West Dudley. They pay for every panel, every inverter, every converter, and their fencing as personal property. They're not taxed as real estate. So it's the contents of the business.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I always like to ask the principal assessor if she would review for people who are watching and here tonight what your function is here at this meeting as a principal assessor and what our function is here at this meeting so that people understand what we're voting on tonight.
Okay, so the reason for the classification hearing is we now have a single tax rate. You can choose to have a split tax rate. Having a split tax rate would shift the burden of the taxes or the tax rate onto the commercial, industrial, personal properties. So it would increase the tax rate for commercial, industrial, but it would decrease the tax rate for residential.
Okay.
And our Board of Assessors recommends what we would like to see, where we assess the properties and have all the information on it, and then you take a vote on what you would like to do.
We just don't have the commercial industrial base to support a
We don't, and if you look on that page where I have
consideration.
the different towns broken down, I've chosen Charlton, Douglas, Leicester, Oxford, Southbridge, Sturbridge, and Webster. And they all have single tax rates except for Webster, and Webster has 21% commercial industrial properties. But if you look at Oxford, they do too, and they also have a single tax rate, not a split tax rate, because there's 21% really isn't a lot. And most of the properties that are commercial and industrial, they're not large businesses, and that's why I do the breakdown for you on who's over $4 million in assessment. I start with $9 million, with $1 million in assessments and up, and there's only 16 in that category. The rest are, pizza places, liquor stores, hair salons, attorney offices, and the other ones that really would be driven out of town if their taxes were that high, if their tax rate was higher.
Anything else?
make the motion.
Gotta get out of the public hearing first. Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I will deem the public hearing closed at 6:51. What's the board's pleasure? Mr. Fox.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we support the recommendation from the Board of Assessors and continue with a single tax rate as we have in the past several years.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ruda. Hearing no further questions or concerns, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Good job, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have two requests from the Board of Health. The first one, to use Clarinda Wood in the amount of $138 for Harrington Memorial Hospital Health Service, July 2015. What is the pleasure?
We missed A, but we can, if you want to continue, take
You
your
want
order.
to Chief Warner?
Let's do the, I'm sorry, Chief, we'll just do these two quick ones and we'll bring her up.
Sure.
Sorry about
Mr.
that.
Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve use of the Clarinda Wood Fund in the amount of $138 for Harrington Memorial Hospital for Health Service in July 2015.
Motion made, and a second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I'll also make a motion that we approve permission to use the Clarinda Wood Fund in the amount of $99.50 for Harrington Memorial Hospital for Health Services in October 2015.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Chief, I'm sorry, there was no documentation in our packet. I skipped right over you. Next up, Chief Weiner and the Dudley Women's Club, introduction regarding care kits in memory of Sergeant Pamela Daniels. Chief Weiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just bring up behind me is
Jean Tilley.
Ms.
And
Jean Tilley, the president of the Dudley Women's Club. Just to give you a brief introduction of a program that we're rolling out a little bit. A little while back, I was contacted by members of the Women's Club in regards to a program that was taking place in another part of the country. And what the basic design of the program is to provide some type of personal care items or different things like that to help children who may happen to be displaced for some reason. DCF comes in and has to relocate them from the home, or they're in some way involved in some kind of a traumatic incident. And so the idea is to give them a backpack or give them some items that they might be able to use. Probably some toiletry items, some school supplies, maybe some general clothing, different items like that might be of assistance to them as they transition over to wherever they're going. So the Women's Club really graciously stepped up and developed the program. And so what we have in our cruisers is we have boxes in the back of the cruisers that contain backpacks and items for different age groups, boys and girls, from elementary school or preschool kids all the way through high school age kids. And we will give them out as needed at different times throughout the incidents. In fact, we just gave one away this past week when we had our drug raids that took place over just before Thanksgiving. One of the families had a young girl that was there, so we were able to give them some assistance at that time. And so it's kind of a work in progress. We're trying to determine exactly what the needs are over time. But it's just, once again, another fine thing from the Women's Club, who have graciously stepped up to help out people in our community. And so I just wanted to make sure we roll this out a little bit, introduce Jean and the group, and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Jean, good evening.
Thank you for having us. Well, this was an idea of a member. We saw the show, the newscast, a town out of Missouri, I think it was, and one of their officers started the program. Somebody in our club came up and said, I think we should do that here. So they talked to Steve, and then we had conversations with the superintendent of the schools to get an idea of what the kids that they identified that what they're needing when they're thrown into these situations. And we had conversations with New Hope and Department of Family and Children. And through all that, we came up with some great ideas. The women from our club stepped up and brought all kinds of wonderful comfort items, as well as necessities. And one of the things we included were school supplies, because apparently when the kids leave quickly, they leave without their school supplies. So that was one of the items we included in the backpacks. So these are just some examples of things we have. We've got some nice fluffy toys. It also helps establish a relationship with the police department that's more positive in the situation that the kids might find themselves. So we thank the police department and Chief Wayner for allowing us to assist in this program. And our women were so overwhelmed with the ability to do it, and the amount of things they brought in was great. Yeah, so thank you.
Well, thank you. Now, Jean, is this going to be an ongoing, if they use them, replace them type thing?
Yes, it is. And as a matter of fact, our club has members from surrounding towns as well, not just Dudley. And so there's a possibility that we'll expand in surrounding towns to include this. We're not aware of this being anywhere in the state yet, so we're kind of a first.
Very good.
And I understand we were on the 6 o'clock news tonight, too, out of Boston.
So if people...
So we're visiting you today?
We were, yes.
So this could be a chance to give a little plug. If people were interested in donating, how would they donate?
Well, I guess we're taking kind of the caretakers of the bags, so they would probably give them to us through the Women's Club. Of course, donations could go directly to Chief Wayner. I'm sure he would not turn down money, especially to help support the program.
Yeah, I think my suggestion is have it work through the Women's Club, because that's, again, they've done a great job with it all, in organizing it. And we'll know as we go through time things that we use, things we don't use, things we might need. But they've done a lot of research with this, got the whole thing set up, and it was a lot of work to put it together. So, and one thing that they brought up was right around the time that this was getting introduced, former Sergeant Pam Daniels passed away. So the suggestion was to make these kits in memory of her. She was actually one of our sexual assault investigators for many years, and she did a lot of work with the department, dealing with a lot of kids, did a lot of school programs and everything else. So they just recommended that it would be fitting to have them in memory of her. So it's a lasting memory going forward, and so we greatly appreciate that. But just wanted to bring this forward to the town's attention and to your attention, and to thank the Women's Club once again for everything with this. This was a tremendous program.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a great program that I think you're absolutely right, Chief. Sergeant Daniels would have probably been right at the forefront of a program like this. So I think it's a very fitting program to have in her memory, and certainly the Board of Selectmen will make the Women's Club. We'll make our social media outlets, and any way we can help to advertise any sort of fundraising or assistance that you need, we'll certainly do that.
Thank you.
Just contact Michelle. I think it's a great program, Chief.
I think the next thing they'll do is they'll get Mr. Fox to be one of the models at the fashion show in the spring.
Yeah.
The only one left that hasn't done it, so.
No? I'm sure he's up for the challenge. Mr. Fox.
This year we're featuring
I
bathing
just
suits.
want, I didn't hear that.
This year we're featuring bathing suits.
Perfect.
He's in.
Perfect.
We've got pictures from the beaches in Australia, believe me. Not widely circulated, but...
Thanks, Chief.
Anytime I can help.
I just want to say I think it's a wonderful idea, and I especially like the idea that it will give an opportunity for the younger children to build a relationship with the police department. In today's complex world of relationships, this is an important step forward to develop that relationship when the kids are young. So I support this 100%.
No, it's unfortunate, too. There's a need, a strong need for that. As you said, just had one recently. It's a fact of life. Dudley's not immune to the challenges and the trials of the biggest cities. It's just,
Sure.
it's
We notice it too,
unfortunate.
especially around this time of the year when we do our holiday drive and everything like that. I mean, consistently, 20 to 25 families that we've dealt with there, and then, the rest goes through like food share and different things like that. So it's not just the big cities or certain areas. We have our own struggles.
Right.
But thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
I see you brought your support system. You don't want to come up and say a word?
Help me carry them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Next up, vote to approve deficit spending in the 2016 snow removal account. Mr. Guyon.
Mr. Chairman, the Highway Department's looking for its annual approval to have us be allowed to overspend the snow removal account. The $80,000 we're budgeted for yearly is barely enough to cover the cost of our sand and salt restocking every year. And this year, it's not going to be enough, simply because of the severity of last year's winter. I think by the time winter was all said and done, we had about 8 loads left in the salt shed. And when you take into consideration, it takes about 20 loads to do the town one time. We had to restock that whole shed up. When all the invoices come in, we're going to be a few $1,000s over the $80,000 already. And with winter just not even here, basically, it's going to be certainly overspent, actually. I think we average about $120,000 a year for winter. I know I talked to the administrator. He's going to try to boost that up from $80,000 to somewhere close to that. But just to put things in perspective, last winter's cost was $160,000. So we're looking to get approval to overspend the snow account.
What did we get for reimbursement, Andy, last year? One of those storms, we got a partial reimbursement?
Well, we're still waiting. I know the fire chief was working on it. I did all the paperwork. I handed it in. I think we're getting back around $35,000 if and when. But the paperwork has been submitted. We haven't seen the check yet.
So that'll be technically for last year's deficit, which
Yes.
we just paid at the last town meeting, though.
Yep.
So, Michelle, can we just make a note when Greg's in to double check with the fire chief where that reimbursement stands? And I know everything goes to the general fund, but maybe we can begin to put some money off on top of the deficit spending request. What do you guys think about that?
And just to put things in perspective, too, I'm sure the board knows, but for people watching at home, I mean, we're funded $80,000 for the year. You know, the Telegram and Gazette did a story on the Highway Department a few years back, and that's about a third to a half of what the neighboring towns get. When I started 37 years ago, we were getting $70,000, and a truckload of sand back then was $14. Today it's $120. So everything went up, but basically the snow budget. So that's we need to increase it if we can.
Note to self, budget process. Any questions for the highway superintendent regarding his request? Nope. Hearing none. Entertain a motion to approve deficit spending.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we approve deficit spending for the Highway Department for the FY 2016 snow removal account.
Second.
So,
Motion made and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Guyon. Next up, town planner position, Jonathan Ruda discussion. I just want to state before we discuss, glad to see this on here. That's a position which I think needs to be addressed, especially now that it's vacant. But Mr. Ruda, you have the ball.
I agree, Mr. Chairman, we should address that position. One thing that I would like the board to ask the town administrator to do is to look at the benefit of hiring an engineer versus a town planner versus an economic development officer. It seems to me that there may be it's been brought to my attention that we may be going down the road towards hiring an engineer, and before we get too far down that road, I think it's important that we do a analysis of what the town needs are versus what we think the town needs are. Right now, I know we work with an engineering firm. We should, one, look at that engineering firm and make sure it's meeting our needs on a daily basis, and we should look at a cost-benefit analysis of hiring an engineer versus continuing to subcontract an engineer out, which is basically no cost to the town. The money moves through our accounts, and we pay an engineer as needed versus hiring someone full-time to do that job. I think we also, at one time, had a recommendation from the FAA to look at an economic development officer. Well, this may be the opportunity. I'm not sure how a town planner and an economic development officer or an engineer may fit together. I know for certain that an engineer and a planner are two very different disciplines. But we need to have someone take a look at it, and that person is Greg Valiakonis at this point, before we rush down the road to making another bad decision.
Right, I know at one point, too, Paul Joseph talked about making the planner position maybe partially funded through the budget And the rest of the budget, the rest of the salary would come from administration fees when grants were approved. I think you've got an excellent point. We need to look at everything to see if this is what we truly need. I mean, development is down in town. Subdivisions are down. The businesses we work with TIFs, like Webco, for example, I'm not exactly sure how that all came to fruition. I know it culminated with us. But I think we do need to examine that position before we make a move on filling it. Mr. Fox.
I have absolutely no problems looking at both those job descriptions, looking to see what is needed, what is not needed, what is important for Dudley now, as well as maybe 5 years down the road. I think job descriptions are very important to take a look at, to make sure that they align themselves, or what do we need and what do we not need. And I agree with Mr. Reuter. I think that we have to look at this. And I also believe Mr. Belliconis is working with the planning board on some of these ideas.
Yes. I believe that.
Correct, Michelle?
I believe right now that one proposal is to fill it with an intern from Central Mass Regional Planning.
That's already happening.
Yes, and if you look at the rate that we're being charged, it obviously will come out of the salary account of the planner position, which was funded, but that's something we need to look at too. And I also would like, when Greg's here, I'll put a little more on his plate. I would like to have the planner job duties and job function be set by the planning board, but I would like to have the town administrator have oversight. If someone's in their office or out of their office, you know, we can get a courtesy from an elected board, but I would like the new position, not sure how we'd even get to do that, but I would like to see the planner report to Greg for a day-to-day basis. You know, we shouldn't be, Michelle will never say it, but I've been here the last couple of weeks, months I was here, people are coming up to the window and they're questioning Michelle as to why so-and-so's not here, and that office is closed. You know, Michelle's constantly helping, which she does a great job at, and I know she's not complaining. But I think if we had more oversight out of our office, might make a more smoothly functioning team here in the town hall. So that's one thing I would like to check, how we could change the lines of reporting.
I agree, Mr. Chairman.
You know, we don't need people coming in and saying, I just saw, you know, something going on outside, why they're not in here, so.
So, Mr. Chairman, the ask of this board to Mr. Belliconis would be to look at the idea of engineer versus town planner versus economic development officer / grant writer, or a combined position.
How that would work.
How that would work.
Because we'd have to,
And make a recommendation to us prior to us moving any further along on the process.
because it's my understanding too that engineer stamps reciprocal. You know, the civil can stamp other plans and vice versa, but we gotta make sure water and sewer are on board, because any engineering for the town would also be used by water and sewer. We have to make sure we're utilizing whatever person, if we went that way, to the best of the ability for the town, financially and work related.
Mr. Chairman, the reason I brought this up specifically is because I know what it costs to hire an engineer and to benefit an engineer and to have a long-term liability of an engineer. I'm not sure how we do that and the town recoups the money from doing that, or even gets close to not operating in the red.
Right.
Versus the situation we have now. I'm open to any suggestion, but the situation we have now with the engineer is we hire him as needed, we pass the money through us, and we pay the guy or the firm. They cost us nothing.
Right.
So to change that now and bring this person on board as a full-time employee for a person who may or may not be a town planner or may not have the certifications required for that, but is an engineer, I don't know if that suits our needs.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, there was a comment in the paper too, from the chairman of the planning board, something to the amount of thousands of papers needed to be filed, and this and that. I mean, we're doing a disservice by having a full planner as opposed to some support staff in there. So there isn't an issue where minutes aren't getting typed or, you know, nobody should go into an office and, if that was accurate, find thousands of papers that need to be filed.
I think the gentleman that's working part-time in that office right now is going through all that and refiling all kinds of information. I also believe that this is something that has to be looked at and has to be looked at quickly, because what I'm afraid of is that there are going to be ideas and the planning board only meets once a month, and then it just goes on and on and on, and nothing ever happens and we don't get any results. So it's something that should be looked at, and it should be addressed by the town administrator with direction from our board.
Right, I mean, Greg's here full-time, and we've given him a lot of authority.
Yep.
One more step down that road. Any questions from the board? Any from the public? Hearing none. Move on. Next is student rep, Alex not here. I just want to state congratulations to the Shepherd Hill football team for another resounding victory on Thanksgiving over Tantascwa. I know it was very important to the team the way they didn't make the playoffs based on the schedule the MIA gave them, that when they had a chance to play teams that were in Shepherd Hill's division, not only did they do very well, they did outstanding. Algonquin was a dogfight to the very end, but Doherty was a playoff team. Shepherd Hill shut them out. Tantascwa was a playoff team. They beat them by 30 points. Shepherd Hill conducted themselves with class in both those games. There was multiple unsportsmanlikes on Doherty. There was at least one on Tantascwa. And through it all, Coach Lindstrom and his staff and his players did us proud. So I'd like to congratulate them on a successful year. Not as quite as successful as they wanted, but certainly well enough in our eyes. Board member comments. Mr. Fox.
I just want to thank all the people who have recently stepped up to volunteer their time on various boards and committees. There seems to be an increase in public activity, so I want to thank people like Mr. Clark for offering to serve on boards and committees, and we now have a Parks and Rec department, and that's moving forward. I'm just glad to see people getting involved in the town.
Mr. Ruda. Wednesday.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, Wednesday. I got it, Michelle.
she's got it.
I'm with you.
One of the things I'd like to go down the road with Mr. Valiakonis with as well is to start looking at the idea after the new year to start maybe expanding town hall hours again, see where we are financially, and kind of look into the feasibility of doing that. We've been at reduced hours for a while now, and we may be in a financial situation where we may be able to do that and provide some more expanded service to the public. And I think that's long overdue. So I'd like to ask him to put that on the agenda after we've had a chance to take a look at it.
I agree. The board went to close Wednesdays about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. And once again, Michelle's the one who gets the phone calls, because even though she's technically closed to the public, she answers the phones. And a lot of times it's a tax collector there, for example, or the clerk's office open, and they're here, but for whatever reason, Michelle gets the brunt of the phone calls. So I agree with Mr. Ruder on that one. And Michelle just slid a paper over to us, but I'm going to make mention that Wednesday is the tree lighting ceremony. Thursday the 3rd. Thursday the 3rd. And Michelle, what time would that be at?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Santa would be here at about what time?
Yeah, give or take.
Within a few minutes of 6. As Michelle likes to say, every year it gets bigger and better. More and more kids, more and more people, more and more adults. Santa comes in bigger and more jovial every year. So we certainly hope everybody can make it, and we hope to see the whole town here. Department heads. Mr. Guillen.
One more thing I'd like to mention, Mr. Chairman. We've had a notice on cable access channel. The Highway Department's had a notice on cable access channel that as of December 1st, which is tomorrow, we want to remind residents that they have to remove all the portable basketball hoops from the roadway. and if they're overhanging the roadway, to move them back, so they don't interfere with the plowing. Trucks don't get hooked on the nets as they go by, cause damage to the basketball hoop and/or the vehicle. So we hope the residents will comply with those wishes.
If not, we can expect a visit from the police, or...
Exactly.
One more too, Michelle. We're supposed to be doing an annual vote on the maintenance and upkeep of one of the private subdivisions in town.
Yes, sir.
And we contacted them over a month ago. We haven't heard anything. Did we
I
contact?
have not contacted
I think our 1 year,
them.
it's gone. So as it stands now, that action this board took over a year ago is now over.
What development is
Hall Lane and Circle Drive.
that? Okay, yep.
They were supposed to bring to us measurable and demonstrated progress towards getting that subdivision accepted. I know they cleaned the drains one time, so as it stands now, that action has expired. Because it had a sunset provision, it was 1 year, right?
So what
Can you research that vote and put on the next, just for information on the next agenda? But I believe it was a 1 year window. It's supposed to come back every year with measurable and...
We're just,
demonstrated.
Mr. Chairman, we're just researching that vote?
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll have an, if,
So if we shouldn't have anybody coming on behalf of until we've had the highway superintendent has had a chance to give us a recommendation as to what action we should take in terms of voting
I
to
missed
continue
that
that
conversation.
agreement or...
the vote for the Paula Lane Circle Drive snow,
Yep.
my recollection was we took a vote last year and said they had to come back in a year.
I did, well, it was a few years ago when the town decided that we were gonna plow that. The stipulation was that they come back every year. It's probably been about 4 years. They would come back every year in October and show at least some sort of progress in getting those roads accepted.
That's
whether it was
right.
Inch by inch, or as long as there was some sort of
That was an
progress.
annual vote.
Because
It's
as
an
I said at
annual
the
vote to
time,
continue.
my fear was that once you start plowing and sanding it, that's gonna be it. Nobody's gonna do nothing or bother doing anything. So we wanna, hopefully have those people come in again like they're supposed to every year in October and show some sort of progress. Because I know there's a lot of subdivisions out there that are watching what's going on. And we don't want to have a domino effect.
Exactly.
We're gonna, Michelle's gonna find the action that we took. We'll talk about the next meeting and just hope nothing happens between now and then. Safety first, though.
Safety first.
Anything else?
Just if we come across a time that's put on the agenda for action, I think that we need to have the highway superintendent give us a recommendation as to what has or had to physically go down there and take a look at the condition of the roadway before we take any further action.
Yeah,
So in other words, this next agenda item, this next meeting, they shouldn't show up in force because we won't be prepared to vote on anything at that point.
well, Danny gave us a report several years ago. I mean, maybe update. I could take a ride through there and do an update on what may or may not be an issue there.
Yeah, like I say, I think we still have the same issues as far as that road being accepted someday. I mean,
There was a big crack down the middle. I
crack
know
down the
that.
middle, there's a drainage issue over there where the
Broken
water comes
berms.
out behind a few houses and goes over Fairview Ave, which is privately owned.
And now that land's for sale in the corner,
Yep.
which I asked the chairman of the planning board, how could that lot be for sale in a subdivision that's expired
I
on
was-
on two private roads?
I was always under the impression that there was some kind of holding tank in there for the drainage system. But
Right.
it may or may not be, so we don't really know. I have no maps or drainage detail on that road at all.
Right, there's no, I remember the guy that installed them came in and said, oh, you can park a truck on top of them, or whatever the case may be, but that's all well and good till somebody parks a truck on them,
Yeah, then it caves in.
and then it caves in. The drainage goes under the road, so if there's an issue,
Yeah, I don't know really where it goes, to be honest with you. you know as well as I do, there's a drainage pipe in back of some other houses. that
Yeah.
when
How
it-
big was
when
that
it really
pipe? We
rains,
looked.
it floods Fairview Ave.
We looked at it.
Yes.
You went crawling back there. Was it a 42 or 48? It was huge.
Yeah, it might be a 24-inch pipe.
I thought it was bigger than that. It looked big from where I was.
But the situation is, if it ever gets accepted by the town, we're gonna have to repair that, and there's really nowhere to pipe that water.
And it just goes right behind the houses on Circle and Paula. And as everyone here, and I'm sure knows, if you go look on Fairview, you can see where it flattens out the vegetation and just pours out.
Yep.
Makes a nice ice plume.
Problems, we don't want no problems.
No.
No. Minimize. Thank you. Anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a move, we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ruda, Mr. Fox, all in favor, state aye. Unanimous. Thank you, everyone.